Start.
Good afternoon and a very warm welcome to everyone. Thank you for joining us on today's webinar. My name is Shauryan and I welcome you all to this session on KSA e-Invoicing system. First, let me give you a brief info about us. We are India's leading e-compliance solution company who are well known for its compliance management, HR management, and compliance and office management solutions. We also have a knowledge academy as well, where you can do all your learnings as per self-paced, as per self-paced courses, staying in line with blogs and webinars, etc. Now, if we come to our topic, as we all are aware that the due date of phase 1 in ZATCA e-Invoicing is approaching soon. Thus, we are here with this webinar where our expert speaker, Mr. Rajeev Khandelwal, will give his expert insights on the same. Mr. Rajeev Khandelwal is a fellow chartered accountant from Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. He has over 3 decades of experience in compliance sector, and he has given more than thousands of webinars and seminars on compliances on various platforms such as NASSCOM, Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, Institute of Company Secretaries of India, Institute of Work, Cost and Work Accountants of India, and various other study circles as well. Now, just for a bit housekeeping, I would like to request you all, if you have any kind of doubts and questions during the webinar, please put them on the chat box. We will take up on them at the end of the webinar. Now, I would request my fellow colleague, Mr. Nazim Iqbal, to address you all in Arabic.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. نرحب بكم ترحيبا حارا في هذه الجلسة. شكرا لكم على الانضمام إلينا في هذه الجلسة، حلقة دراسية شرقية اليوم. اسمي محمد نازم إقبال، أرحب بكم في هذه الجلسة على نظام الفواتير الإلكترونية في المملكة السعودية العربية نيابة عن عائلة شركة ويبتيل. نحن في الهند واحدة من الشركات الرائدة الإلكترونية الامتثالية، معروفة لإدارة الامتثال وإدارة المكاتب وإدارة الموارد البشرية. لقد أدرجنا الأكاديمية المعروفة كذلك، حيث يمكنكم أن تفعلوا كل ما تبذلونه من التعلم عن طريق اختيار حلقة دراسية شرقية ذاتية والبقاء في خط ما مدونات. كما نعلم جميعا أن تحقيق الاستقرار المرحلة الأولى للفواتير الإلكترونية مرحلة الجيل في زاتكا قريب جدا، وهكذا نقدم اليوم هذه حلقة دراسية شبكية، حيث يقدم متحدث خبير لدينا السيد راجيف خانديلوال حول نظام الفواتير الإلكترونية في زاتكا، وسيحصى كل شكوك فيما يتعلق في هذا الشأن. السيد راجيف خانديلوال هو زميل محاسب قانوني من معهد المحاسبين القانونيين في الهند، وهو أيضا DICA مراجع حسابات في أنظمة معتمدة، وهو أيضا خريج كلية شريرام للتجارة SRCC. لديه أكثر من 3 عقود من الخبرة في قطاع الامتثال. خاطب السيد خاندلوال أكثر من آلاف الندوات وحلقات دراسية شبكية حتى الآن حول الامتثال في منتديات مختلفة مثل ناسكوم ومعهد المحاسبين القانونيين في الهند ومعهد أمناء الشركات في الهند ومعهد محاسب التكلفة والأعمال في الهند ودوائر الدراسة المختلفة. الآن قبل أن نبدأ، إذا كان لديكم أي أسئلة خلال الجلسة يرجى كتابتها في صندوق الدردشة، وسوف نتواصل الأمر في نهاية الجلسة. الآن دون مزيد من التأخير سنطلب من السيد راجيف خاندلوال أن يبدأ هذه الجلسة. Sir, you are requested to start the session, sir. Thank you, sir.
Now, without any further delay, I would request Rajeev Khandelwal sir to start this session. Sir, please.
Okay, a very good afternoon to all the participants. Assalamu alaikum. Today's topic is very important, and very few days, just over a month is left for e-invoicing phase 1. And there are many important things that we need to be aware of. And so I'll be like to talk about all those important things. And let me start my presentation right away. So are you ready for e-invoicing in KSA? Let us see. So what is e-invoicing, first of all? I think by now everybody's aware that it is obviously e-invoice is the short form of electronic invoice. And many countries have already implemented e-invoicing, including in India and many of your neighboring countries also, and they are reaping its benefits. In KSA, it's a phased implementation, and it is basically generation of invoices from ERP or the accounting software as it was being done earlier, but now it will be in an electronic format. So let us now also see the e-invoicing developments in the Middle East. In UAE, VAT was introduced in 2018, and it is expected that next year e-invoicing will begin there also. In Qatar, state-of-art digital tax administration system was introduced, and VAT and e-invoicing may be introduced together soon. And when we talk about KSA, again, as I said, it's in a phased implementation. And in the first phase, which is the generation phase, which will begin from 4th December 2021, all the taxpayers will have to follow it. And the second phase will be the integration phase, where integration with ZATCA will have to be done by you. And this will begin from 1st January 2023. And it will be a phased implementation for different waves, for different taxpayers, for different class of taxpayers, this will be done. So what is e-invoicing? Obviously, handwritten invoices, if we were issuing till now, some of the smaller businesses may be doing that, or scanned paper invoices, or data in PDF or Word format, that is not e-invoicing. E-invoicing is basically invoices generated electronically in a structured format from an electronic system. And obviously it includes all the requirements of a VAT invoice. There are various benefits of e-invoicing. For business also, it will be a standard invoice which will be readable by other softwares. The purchase invoices which we get will not have to be punched. They can be directly imported in the ERP softwares that we are using. Similarly, our buyers will be able to import that data in their systems. And updation of sales and purchase details will take place on the portal in the phase 2. And there will be a smooth input tax credit reconciliation, though that will not be easy. The India experience tells us that's not an easy task. So let us see how it happens in KSA. And obviously, when the government implements something, there is benefit for the government also. It will be real-time reporting of the invoices. It will be a complete trail of invoices for the government, and system-level matching of input and output tax will take place. And there will be elimination of fake invoices, which is a big challenge for all the governments all over the world. Other benefits will be to increase tax compliances via more robust transaction verification between buyers and sellers, to reduce commercial concealment through strengthened requirements around invoice tracking and data retention. And also, it will improve KSA's ranking in the world with better tax practices. And it will also help the consumer by providing a standardized mechanism for invoice documentation and auditing, checking whether this invoice is correct or not. Applicability to invoices. Now let us see to which invoices it is applicable. Broadly, there are two types of invoices, simplified tax invoices and tax invoices, and their associated tax notes, and e-invoicing will be applicable to all these. Further, let us see to whom it is applicable. It is applicable to each taxable person resident in the kingdom, irrespective of turnover. Whatever your turnover, if you are a taxable person under VAT, then e-invoicing is applicable to you. Third parties that issue tax invoices on behalf of a resident tax person, also they have to follow e-invoicing. But non-resident taxpayers are excluded from e-invoicing. E-invoicing is applicable to all taxable supplies, whether standard rate supplies or zero rate supplies. They're also applicable to all residents and to all non-residents, even if you are exporting goods or services, even in that case, e-invoicing will be applicable. And obviously, when you make sales to residents, e-invoicing will have to be followed. So where e-invoicing is not applicable, let us see. It's not applicable to exempt supplies, import of goods, and supplies subject to reverse charge mechanism, or in short, RCM. As I said, it's a phased implementation. What are the timelines? The generation phase will be applicable with effect from 4th December 2021 for all taxpayers. Please remember this phase 1 is for all taxpayers and not to any specified persons. Phase 2, which will be the integration phase, will be applicable with effect from 1st January 2023, and it will be applicable to different groups of taxpayers in waves, which will be notified by the government in due course. Only 37 days remain for phase 1, and how prepared you are in the due course of these discussion, we will see what all needs to be done and how much have you done. And by the end of the webinar, I think you'll be able to judge yourself as to how much you are prepared for it. So in the generation phase, what are the general requirements? Invoice will have to contain some additional fields such as a QR code, which is mandatory for simplified tax invoices. And generation of invoices in an electronic format and storage of invoices which have been generated in an electronic format. If we talk about the phase 2, the integration phase, the general requirements are that the e-invoice should contain additional fields such as cryptographic stamp, generation of e-invoice in XML format, which is an electronic term, computerized term, extensible markup language format, and upload of invoice at the ZATCA portal. For standard invoices, it will be a clearance model, and for simplified invoices, it will be a reporting model. We'll see the difference between the two. Now let us also try and understand, because time and again you'll be reading about these, and also I'll be talking about these things. A cryptographic stamp. What is a cryptographic stamp? It is basically a digital signature of the hash of the document or invoice in our case. It helps to ensure that the invoice was created by the specified sender and that the content has not been changed or altered. It helps identify the issuer for ensuring compliance with the e-invoice provisions. So a cryptographic stamp will be needed in phase 2. We'll just talk about that. Other important terms also let us understand. You'll be also reading or listening about unique identification number, UUID. So it is a 128-bit number generated by an algorithm chosen to make it unlikely that the same identifier or a number will be generated by anyone else. So it will be a unique number in the universe. It is used by a compliant e-invoice solution and stored in the invoice XML. So the XML which is generated of e-invoice will contain this UUID. Then another thing we need to understand is about the hash. Hash is a digital fingerprint of the invoice data. It is a summarized text encoded using all the information that is available in the document, invoice in our case. It is obtained using a standardized hashing algorithm. It is used by a compliant invoice solution and stored in invoice XML. It verifies that the invoice data has not been altered or changed. And whether UUID or hash, both are not required to be visible on the physical invoice, and taxpayer need not know this value during the normal invoice generation process. Standard invoices, technical requirements, let us try and understand. These are relating to security and integrity. In the first phase, for standard invoices, QR code is mandatory for simplified tax invoices, and invoices are to be stored in the electronic format. Other things are not required. In phase 2, QR code will be mandatory for all invoices, whether tax invoices or simplified tax invoices, and e-invoice will have to be stored in XML or PDF A3 with embedded XML. Other requirements, the cryptographic stamp that I just now talked about, hash, UUID, all these will also be there in case of e-invoicing in the second phase, and also a temper-resistant counter that which will be there incrementing for each invoice and credit note or debit note is issued. So all these things are the additional requirements which will help in security and integrity of the invoice. Then standard invoices requirements, more requirements, let us see. Connectivity is not required in phase 1 because data is not to be uploaded anywhere. It is to be kept with the taxpayer himself. In the second phase, which is the integration phase, you should have the ability to establish an encrypted and authenticated connection over the internet, such as lease line, and also integration with ZATCA will be required because invoices will have to be uploaded at the port. So in phase 1, the physical tax invoice, basically there will be no change. And the buyer VAT or TIN will be required in case of B2B invoices or tax invoices. Other things are more or less remaining the same. But when we talk about a physical simplified tax invoice, if you're issuing to the client, in that case, a QR code is mandatory. QR code has something similar to which you can see on the screen, that is mandatory on the invoice like this. Besides the normal things that we are accustomed to till now in the invoice, this QR code will also be required to be printed on the invoice. That is necessary. And it will have to be generated by the taxpayer himself. The government, the ZATCA will not be giving it to you. It will have to be generated by you. And this will be both in the physical and the electronic format of the invoice that you will have to store for the later use. Okay, so it has to be there in the physical format also and in the electronic format also. In phase 2, in the physical invoice, all invoices, the QR code is required, and it helps in validating the invoice. The data of the important data of the invoice, the VAT number, the other particular product or service which it is related to, all these things, the important data that is there in the QR code. And when we use a QR code scanner in your mobile phone or some other app, etc., then we can see this important data. And this is required in both case of tax invoice and simplified tax invoice in the phase 2. What is not required in phase 2 on the physical invoice, but it required in the e-invoice? That is the UUID or the unique identification number, the hash, and the counter value. These are needed in the XML format or the electronic format, but they are not needed in the physical invoice. Now, what will this QR code for invoice contain? Let us understand and see. In phase 1, for the simplified invoice, it will have to contain when we use a QR code scanner, we should be able to see the name of the seller, the VAT registration number of the seller, date of invoice, that is the time stamping of invoice with date and time, total e-invoice amount with the VAT, and the VAT amount. All these are required in phase 1 for simplified invoice. For tax invoice, it may be used, it may be shown by you on the invoice, but it's not mandatory for tax invoice, but it is mandatory for simplified invoice. I think that is clear. The other things are not required in phase 1. And when we talk about the phase 2 for all invoices, all these things which were mandatory for simplified invoice in the first phase are mandatory in the second phase as well. Additionally, all these things, the hash of the invoice, cryptographic stamp, public key to generate cryptographic stamp, and public key of invoicing solution, cryptographic stamp, all these are required in the phase 2 for all invoices. So that is the difference between phase 2 and phase 1 as far as the QR code is concerned. There's a question from Fazal Beg. He's asking that if QR code is mandatory for simplified invoices in phase 1, and if a company is involved in both types of sales, B2B and B2C, and have one unified invoice format, do they have to print the QR code? As I said, voluntarily you can use for B2B also. Even if you do not use for B2B, the government is fine with that, ZATCA is fine with that. But for operational purposes, as you are rightly saying, that we have a single format for both of them. So if you wish to show QR code in B2B invoices, that is perfectly fine, because you are doing more than what the law requires. So no issues with that. You can continue asking the questions. I'll try and reply them in between. And if some questions remain, we can also answer them at the end of the webinar. So let us see what is the process of standard invoice phase 1 generation phase. The supplier will generate invoice as usual. If he is using an electronic system, otherwise he will have to shift to an electronic system. And he will share the invoice with the buyer, and he will store invoice in an electronic format. I'll be explaining these things in greater detail later on, so don't worry about that if you have not understood something. In the phase 2, in the case of standard invoice, the supplier system will generate invoice in XML format and upload it at the ZATCA platform in real time. And like this, the platform validates the invoice information. It will check whether this invoice information is in the proper format or not, whether it is correct or not. And once it is okay, then the file will be cleared and digitally signed by ZATCA in real time. And supplier system receives validated and signed invoice back. And supplier shares invoice with the buyer. And buyer can verify invoice clearance status on the platform by checking the digital signature or scanning the QR code. This is the entire process for a standard invoice in phase 2 integration phase. So in the 2 phases, you can see comparatively how things will be done. I won't repeat that. When we talk about a simplified invoice in the generation phase or the phase 1, the person or the taxpayer will generate invoice. And obviously, the ability to scan the QR code will be there, and he will store in electronic format and give the invoice to the customer who can check the QR code. In the phase 2, he will generate the invoice, and the ability to scan QR code obviously will be there when the invoice is given to the customer. He uploads the invoice at ZATCA portal within 24 hours, and he stores the invoice. Few things are not allowed in e-invoicing. Then Faisal Beg is also asking whether invoices issued using ERP like SAP will be considered as electronically generated and stored invoices. Yes, they will be considered as electronical invoices, and they will satisfy the requirements of ZATCA, so no issues with that. So what is not allowed? Let us see. In the phase 1 generation phase, uncontrolled access is not allowed. Tampering of e-invoice or the associated notes or logs is not allowed. Multiple invoice series is not allowed. In phase 2 or the integration phase, besides these, what else is not allowed? Let us see. Obviously, these are not allowed in the phase 2 also. Then allowing export of a cryptographic stamping key is not allowed. And also allowing software time changes or modification of timestamp value during an issue of invoice is also not allowed. Let us try and understand these things in a little more detailed manner. What does that mean? Uncontrolled access means anonymous access. We cannot know who has accessed the data. Ability to operate with a default password. That should not be allowed, though in many cases we do that. Absence of user session management. So all these things are not allowed. Then tampering of e-invoice. That is allowing alteration or deletion of generated invoices. That's not allowed. Allowing for log modification or deletion. That's not allowed. And generation with yeah, I think there was some issue with the internet. I've joined back. Just a minute. So these are the kind of issues which will take place if you are not ready with invoicing. Even I was ready, even after that I faced some problem. So if you are not ready, obviously the problems will be there. So we have seen what these tampering of e-invoice, etc. means. Now let us move to the challenges in e-invoicing. I think many challenges are there in e-invoicing, which you might be facing. So what are the challenges in e-invoicing? I think already you might be aware of some challenges. I'll be talking about other challenges. Validations. Huge impact on business operations and IT infrastructure. Only summary information was required in the VAT return, but here even each and every field of the invoice needs to be validated as per the structure, as per the norms that have been issued by ZATCA. Invoice solutions, you'll have to see whether the ERP or the accounting package that you are using will be ready with necessary changes well in time. Is it already ready, or it will be ready in the near future? If yes, what is the cost, time, and effort of updation? Because it may be ready, but it may be very costly. So it needs to be cost effective also. You have to see that. Are other integration solutions are available? We have to look for around for those also. In the case of POS or point of sales, where there are various challenges, let us see which are these. What if the customer asks for the standard tax invoice? Is the system will allow that? This e-invoicing should not increase the customer wait time, otherwise he will get very anxious or angry also. Generation of QR code will be required for B2C cases. So will the solution offer that? And QR code should be in the TLV format and not readable by human eye. And most POS don't have the local archival facility, which is required for e-invoicing. This is a requirement for e-invoicing. And if it is not there in your solution, then obviously you have to look for alternative solutions. Then there is a reconciliation challenge. It is going to be a huge challenge because there's likely to be a mismatch of data of ERP, of e-invoices uploaded, of data of VAT return. All these things, the three will have to be matched by you. Then only the issues will be resolved. And I've also been told, and in few of the clients that we are already doing e-integration work in KSA, we have been told that there are multiple invoice generation systems. This will further complicate matters. So these reconciliation, again, this will be a huge challenge. And Webtel solution is giving an excellent solution for reconciliation also. Phase-wise implementation will also be a challenge. And it will be definitely costlier. If you should go for an integration, you should go for an integrated solution. You should not go for phase one first. See, the phase one is staring us in the face, and we should go for it. And we'll later on see about phase two. Please do not do that. It will be problematic. It will be costlier. And again, you may not be ready when the time comes for phase two. It will require more time and effort. So please don't do that. It's not recommended. Go for a solution which is ready with both the phases as of now. Now, invoice sequence, the current business practice is that ERP billing software is there in an invoice in an organization, and multiple invoice sequences series are being used across various stores. So that's happening as of now. In the e-invoicing regime, they say that each e-invoicing solution can only have one invoice sequence. Whether this is a challenge, I think let's park this question, and we'll be coming back to this later on in the FAQs. Invoice modification, cancellation or deletion. Presently, invoices could be modified, cancelled or deleted, but in the new regime, it will not be possible. Only credit or debit notes will have to be issued for modification, cancellation or deletion of invoices. Then month-end closing entries. Everywhere you are aware, the sales guy try to push the sales of the month, and for that they ask the invoice people or the accounting people to issue backdated entries with VAT after the month end to meet the sale targets. Whether this will be possible in the new regime, because there will be real-time reporting of the tax invoices and reporting in 24 hours of the simplified tax invoices. So this again will be a challenge. Then invoice for advance payment or deemed supply, VAT on advance receipt, VAT on deemed supply. As of now, manually it is being paid with the VAT return. In the invoicing regime, separate invoice will have to be generated even for these. That's another challenge. Then also we have industry specific challenges, like in case of these big companies like Nestle, HUL, etc. They are sending their material and they have huge number of items. They are sending through their own vans, etc., delivery vans. And when the material is dispatched, you do not know how much content of each product the person will buy. The retailer or the wholesaler, how much will he buy? When it is taken there, he tells, or he may have given the order for, let's say, 500 chocolates, Nestle chocolates, 200 packets of chips, etc. But when he reaches, he changes. He say, no, I just need 150 of the chocolates, per chocolates, and 100 packets of chips. The demand is low. So at that time, we may change. So if you generate e-invoice, when you start the dispatch from your place, and later on he changes, then an invoice, then debit note or credit note will have to be issued. Same is the case with Pepsi. 7-Up may be there, Pepsi may be there, and other cold drinks would be there. And the person at the time of delivery, at that time he will tell how many crates of Pepsi he needs, how many crates of 7-Up he needs. And if he changes that and invoice has already been generated, then a debit note or credit note will have to be issued. It's again a challenge which was there presently also, but since invoicing was not there, so it was not a big challenge, and invoice was issued at that point of time when delivery was taking place. But now that has changed, and you will have to do changes in your system. What will have to be done, you'll have to see. We have tried to work out a solution for the companies like these, and if you are also facing a problem, we'll try to sort it out. Then another problem is that in case of infrastructure, road construction companies like the company that whose invoice I'm showing you on the screen, they have in the invoice cumulative till last month, current month data, and the cumulative total. But in e-invoice format, there is no facility for showing all this. There's only the final data which is there in the last column that is to be shown. So what will they do? Or some annexure, etc. will have to be issued. So again, an industry specific challenge. Then what about negative values? Is that a challenge? Negative values is not an issue because they can be shown under deductions. As positive values. So the department has already, the ZATCA has already considered that. So you don't need to show negative values. Positive values can be shown under deductions. When we talk about other compliances like VAT return is late, tax deposited late, obviously there are penalties, late fees, fine, etc. for those also. But when we talk about e-invoicing, if we are not ready by the relevant date, which is 4th December 2021, just 37 days from now, if you are not ready for phase 1, the business continuity will be at stake. You cannot afford at this point of time or at that point of time to tell your boss, your director, or your vice president or president that, sir, the dispatches cannot take place because electronic invoice cannot be generated, because that is the requirement of law, that it has to be stored and then only the material can be dispatched. Or if in the phase 2, if you are not ready and you cannot dispatch the material because the ERP is not ready, because you are not ready, because your advisor is not ready. In that case, you'll not be able to dispatch the material. And you cannot never tell your boss that this is the position. And because of some statutory compliance, the business will have to come to a standstill for the next 7 days, next 15 days. We will not be able to dispatch material. Can you even afford to do that? Obviously, that's not possible. So please ensure you are ready for each of these phases and do not wait for even the second phase. Be ready for the first phase and be ready for the second phase also right away or even after some time. Be comfortable with that. That's not necessary on the 4th of December itself, but a few weeks or a few months, 1 or 2 months, by that time, please be ready, because ultimately you have to get ready for it, and time, you have so many other things also to do. So please be ready in time. So now let us see, there are a few questions. Let me see those also. Sales invoice sequence number, I'll just cover. So I'll cover that later on. So requisites of a good solution, e-invoicing solution. Let us see what are the requisites when we are looking for different solutions. You have to see these solutions. What you have to look for that. It should be capable of real-time upload of invoices and get back validated invoices from ZATCA in sufficiently good time. It should be capable of managing large volumes. It should be scalable, flexible, and user-friendly. Not too much complicated that a user cannot use. Experience of integrating with the APIs should be there. Real-time upload of simplified tax invoices is also recommended after validation, even though it is not mandatory. And prompt update should be there, because whenever a new things comes, a lot of changes take place, because the department may ZATCA may want to do away with the initial glitches. It may be correcting the system, it be making the system more user friendly. So a lot of changes initially are expected. So the system should be such, the solution should be such which can promptly update the solution. And you do not have to wait for dispatches. Then, so look for the available solutions, take demos, weigh pros and cons, and take a quick decision. Involve both the IT and the domain teams, because this is a decision which is to be taken by both of them. Cheap is not always the best. Somebody may be offering a very cheap solution to you, but it may be having various issues. So please do not go for that. Go for solution for both phases. Just do not go, okay, the solution provider may say, we will provide you, as of now, we are not ready with the solution, but by January 1, 2023, we'll be ready for the phase 2 also. You never know whether he'll be ready or not, whether there will be issues or not. So go for a solution provider who is already ready for both the phases. Why? Let him take the risk while you taking the risk. Take into account the data security concerns. On-premise solution suits large corporates due to criticality of data, whereas cloud solutions are suitable for small taxpayers or those who need anytime, anywhere access. So all these things are very important, and you must take these into account while you are deciding for the solution. Besides that, so what all will be in the solution? The e-invoicing application will be there. Then integration of this e-invoicing application with your ERP will take place. And then in the second phase, the integration with ZATCA will take place. So this is the summarized picture, what will happen. So what all has to be done if we talk about the complete invoicing journey, including phase 2, the data will have to be converted in XML format, upload of invoice data at the ZATCA portal, download of e-invoice, saving QR code in ERP, etc., generation of invoice with QR code, and printing of PDF or paper invoice. So who will be doing all this? WebTel solution is capable of sailing you through both the phases, integration phase as well as the generation phase. And we have a customer-friendly, user-friendly solution, which will definitely help you. We have both the models, which is a local host model as well as a SaaS model. The on-premise solution with the local host or a cloud-based solution. Both the solutions are available as per your convenience, as per your data criticality, as I told you. Technical diagrams, I'll just quickly run through because time is short. We can have different options like integration with ERP. Option 1 is API or the application programming interface on-premise solution. Then we also have the staging tables option, the FTP solution, and FTV with the mapping tool. I'll just running through because time is short and I have to cover the other important things also. Those of you who are interested in the solution, our people will get in touch with you and explain to you the entire process, all these diagrams in greater detail. Then reconciliation is also going to be a big challenge, as I told you. So we have a proper reconciliation engine, and already for some of the clients who we are already doing e-invoicing, we are doing this reconciliation piece also. And so WebTel role will be, the technology will be just as I showed to you just now, and using APIs, WebTel will fetch e-invoice data from the ERP of the client, upload on the web solution and ZATCA in the second phase, And the QR code obtained from the ZATCA will be provided to the client's ERP from printing on the invoice. Let me also just show you in a few moments how our web solution looks like. If you want a cloud-based solution, that is also available, and how it looks like, I'll just show you. You can log into the solution, and thereafter these screen will appear, and there is one-time creation of masters, and also if large number of items or large number of vendors, etc. are there. So we have an option of importing the masters also. So that option is there. Like this, you can enter the company details and other details, units, party master items, etc. That can be done one by one or using the bulk scheme. And the document details you can punch in manually, or again you can use the Excel files. And we have the various options. Once the data is uploaded here, you can print the invoice, you can generate XML like this. And the printed invoice will look like this on the right hand side. This is the XML containing the hash function, and the PDF template can be customized according to the client. So what is the roadmap? Now we've understood the basic things. So what is the roadmap? Let us see. Whether e-invoicing is applicable to me or not, you have to find out first of all that. And it's applicable to almost everybody, because all taxpayers are included in that. You have to understand the e-invoicing requirements. You have to get ready to generate invoices. You have to familiarize yourself with e-invoicing and ensure your staff also gets familiar with it. Ensure your staff is ready well in time. Be aware of the statutory updates. And remember, it is a business critical application. The business will come to a standstill if you are not ready for it. And don't look at phase one in isolation. Look for the complete requirements as a whole. Start early. In fact, begin immediately if you've not already done that. In minimum 2-3 months are required for all this integration, etc. But I think we have lesser time now. And even the e-invoicing solution providers will get busy as the moment approaches, as the D-Day approaches. And each client has different environments. It is not a plug and play like solution. So you have to give time to the solution provider also. And the ZATCA will provide a sandbox to test each solution before it can be deployed into the taxpayer's ERP or the accounting solution. So time is short. Let me not take you in all these details, but time is short and you must begin right away. All these trainings, disaster recovery, all these things are also important. Phase one, let us recapitulate because that's just steering us in the phase. Types of invoices, a generation of tax invoice and simplified tax invoice and associated notes. Invoice format, no specific format has been specified. The structure, it must contain all the mandatory fields, must comply with the field level validations, that is the allowable value should be put in, and compliance with business rules assigned to conditional fields, and time stamping should be there. Data processing and security, tamper evidence mechanism for simplified tax invoices and notes is required. Data storage and archival, export of generated invoices and associated notes into an external archival system should be there. And even the exported file name, what name should be there has been specified, which should contain the VAT registration number, the e-invoice or the note date of issue, time of issue, and the reference number or the IRN. This time stamping is required on the invoice, and there is a proper software for time stamping, and that must also be a part of the solution. And this is something how it will look like when you see a timestamp document. The signing time is date and time is coming. And other things are also there. Once a document is digitally signed, then the identity of the signer is there, that no changes have been done to this document, that is there. This is similar to the e-invoicing thing. And even the date time is there. If you, how many, okay, let me ask a quick question. How many of you think that you can use a Word format or a Excel format of invoice or a PDF format for storing the invoice in the electronic format in phase 1? Please answer me in the chat box quickly. How many of you can think that you can use Word, Excel, or PDF for storing invoice in the electronic format? Quick replies. Yeah, Fazal Beg knows that these are not allowed. Absolutely. Because if these are allowed, then in the Word format, you know, you are doing changes every now and then. You can make the changes. You can make any changes. 10,000 real, you can make 1 lakh real or 10 lakh reals. We will know, or the other way around. In Excel, you can make all these changes. Even in PDF, some people may think that in PDF you can not make the changes, but there are tools in which you can edit even a PDF document. So these are not the solutions for even for phase 1. What to say of phase 2? Phase 2 obviously is XML format. So even in phase 1, these are not allowed, and time stamping cannot take place. These are not tamper proof. So these are not the solutions for phase 1. So it has to be either an XML format. So the solution provider should be ready for that, or it should be a PDF A3 solution. And then some of us might think that they are saying that these invoices have to be stored at your own place. So even if I do not do that, who will know? How many of you think of that? Even if I do not store invoices, because in the phase 2, I have to report to the ZATCA portal. In phase 1, it is to be kept at my own office, my own place of work. So who will know even if I'm not doing that? So, no government is a fool. They have mechanisms in place. And I think till date also you have the experience of that. And another thing I'll tell you is the audit. The compliance audit. The taxpayers may be subject to the ZATCA e-invoicing compliance audit from time to time. They may visit your premises and check the compliance with the requirements of e-invoicing, whether you are fulfilling that or not. So you have to provide ZATCA auditors with all the data required to enable them to check various compliances, and also provide them with archived e-invoice and associated debit note or credit note files. So you cannot be saved. You have to ensure that you are ready for this, and you are storing this electronic invoices or the invoices in electronic format, because anytime these ZATCA people may come and check the compliance. And obviously in the phase 2, the data will have to be uploaded. So in that case, compliance will be necessary. But even in this phase, please get ready. Otherwise, there are huge penalties, etc. You are aware about that. So now coming to the few, let me take a few questions. So Adil Javed is asking, so SAP itself can depend. So that is not considered as storage. It has to be separately stored. There has to be a local archival system. It may be there in your SAP, it may be there in your ERP, Fences, or whatever ERP you are using. It may be there, but a separate local archival is required. And that will be a challenge, as I was talking about, for POS or point of sales machines also, cash registers, etc. There also it will be a challenge, because the local, generally these are, the dump is being taken at a central place. But here a local archival at that particular place is needed. So that is required. So let me take a few quick questions. Can a different IRN format be used for government issued invoices Riyadh branch invoices, and other branch invoices. So the answer to that is, according to the paragraph 5B of Article 53 of the VAT implementing regulation, an IRN must be visible on the invoice to identify the tax invoice. The regulation does not specify the format of this number. Taxpayers can use different formats for the IRN so long as it uniquely identifies the tax invoice. Further, a question is repeatedly being asked from our existing users for whom we are doing the invoicing solution also, that it is prohibited to issue multiple invoice sequences of invoices. I have multiple branches across KSA, and each branch has its own invoice sequence. So whether that is allowed. I think that's a question also being asked in the chat also. So let us answer that. So please refer to the article, paragraph 2E of Article 3 in the controls requirements, technical specification and procedural rules of the implementing the provisions of the invoicing regulation. It says that the invoice sequence number mentioned within the prohibited functions above does not refer to the invoice reference number that identifies the tax invoice. It refers to the technical ability of the invoicing solution to issue invoices using multiple sequence counters. So that means you can continue to have different invoice sequences for your different branches, but the invoicing solution should not use the same series. I can also demonstrate like this. The example of the current sequencing of e-invoicing system is the series should be like this for that particular e-invoicing system. It should not be multiple series like this in the right hand side, which is there. So this is not correct. This is the correct sequencing of e-invoicing system. To clarify further, e-invoicing solution unit, it is a component of an e-invoice solution used by the taxpayer. It is assigned to a specific location. It generates a continuous change of linked e-invoices and associated notes in XML format, and each unit must have its own cryptographic stamp identifier. It stamps each invoice in its invoice and associated note sequence. To take the example of a cash register, each cash register should generate a single paper tape as a record of the invoices issued on it. So different series for different invoices is allowed, but a particular e-invoicing solution should generate only one series. Then a few more questions I'll take. Then regarding the server requirements, there are questions like, is there any data residency or data center legal requirement? Let us see that. In accordance with the relevant article, in case of cloud invoicing solution, cloud data center located outside the kingdom is used. In that case, an extension or access to data must be available in the branch that is located in the kingdom, and it should allow access to all related records. So if it is there outside, then this provision should be there. Additionally, non-tax related regulations may apply to the taxpayer, such as the National Cybersecurity Authority or the National Data Management Office published laws, etc. So they have to be followed. Then how to ensure compliance of phase 1 requirements for simplified invoice? QR code is a must. Even if you are printing it in a paper invoice, you must have a digital copy of the same. You can ask more questions. I'll try to reply the questions on the chat box also. Otherwise, a few of the questions, FAQs which are there, I'll answer to those. Does my e-invoicing solution need to be cloud-based to be able to implement e-invoicing? The answer is no. The taxpayer can use any invoicing system to generate and store invoices as long as it meets the requirements published by ZATCA. Solution can be on-premise or on cloud-based. Are VAT registered individuals subject to e-invoicing issuance? Yes, there is no exemption for the individuals registered as taxpayers. If they have a VAT number, they have to also, e-invoicing will be applicable to them, but non-resident taxpayers are exempt. What are the invoice requirements in phase one? We've already talked about that, but let us talk about them. They have a minimal number of additional fields which should be followed. For simplified tax invoices and the associated notes, a mandatory QR code is there. And for tax invoices and the associated notes, optional QR code and mandatory VAT number of the buyer, if the buyer is a registered VAT taxpayer, is to be included in the e-invoice. And there is no specific file format mandated for phase one. However, invoices must include the mandatory fields and must be issued from an electronic system meeting ZATCA's requirements. In addition, electronic copies of all issued invoices must be stored by the taxpayer. Then the question arises, how can I share my invoice with the buyer or the customer? A printed copy of the tax or the simplified invoice or the related notes, which has been generated electronically, must be provided to the customer upon agreement. In that case, electronic format or any other human readable format invoice is also allowed. Integration is with ZATCA on 4th of December is not required. It will be required in the second phase. Then there's a question. Then there's a question from Fazal Beg again. Any payments related to suppliers fully exempted from VAT and received by a taxable person before supply, do we need to generate invoices? No, as I told you, for exempt invoices, invoicing is not applicable. You need not issue an invoice. A normal invoice can be issued. If QR code is generated from our POS system, can WebTel e-invoice system be used for archiving and integration with ZATCA? Obviously, that's facilities available ferociously. If the QR code is generated from your POS system, in that case, the WebTel e-solution, invoicing solution will help you for archiving and also later on for integration with ZATCA. That's possible. Will there be any changes to the VAT filing or declaration process after the e-invoice regime? No, there will be no changes. VAT filing will take place as usual. As of now, how will I know about the phase two? Phase two will be intimated to you, and it will not start before January 2023. And even from July 2022 onwards, you'll be able to know whether you will be covered in the first wave or the second wave, whatever. Then another question, whether e-invoice is applicable in the case of imports or exports. So the answer to that is for exports, an electronic invoice must be generated. For imports, it's not required. Can the seller modify or cancel the invoice if it contains error after issuing an electronic invoice? It cannot be changed. Only a debit or a credit note can be issued. So that was all I wanted to share with you. You have a few more moments if you want to ask the questions. You can also visit our website or the portal www.webtel.in. And here we have shared a few videos and the basic requirements of the phase one and the phase two. And you can visit the website, and the contact information is also available there. There is a link to book your demo also, and our qualified persons will you the various requirements, show you how actually integration will take place, explain the diagrams in greater detail. Then for queries, etc., you can contact on these numbers which are there on your screen. And there's the email ID also that you can get in touch with us. And we will definitely be glad to assist you, to help you in this big mammoth exercise which is underway, and which might seem simple to some, but when you actually start doing the work, it's not easy. This integration requires technical requirement, and as consultants, if some of the consultants or the chartered accountants, etc., are there in the webinar, or they get to see it later on also, it's important for you also to ensure that your clients are ready with all this. Otherwise, they will be asking you later on why you did not help us, because the department will be levying penalties on them. the businesses will come to a standstill. So we cannot watch from outside. We cannot stand just like that. We have to ensure that all our clients are ready with e-invoicing. For advance recovery, for retentions, etc., also e-invoice has to be generated. And Mohammed Niaz Nasir is asking, so Webtel solution will be compatible with contracting business invoices? Definitely. For advanced recovery or for retentions, also you can generate e-invoices. Basically for different type of invoices, and obviously the more the number of invoices that you have, different type of invoices, the more will be the effort, the more will be the time needed to customize it according to your requirements, more the necessity to get ready early, because this will take time. Any more questions? Otherwise, we will close this session. So thank you very much for a very patient hearing, and it was you have been a wonderful audience, and I hope my team will continue doing more such webinars, and knowledge sharing sessions could be there, so that we can make e-invoicing simpler for you, and the path to invoicing should be simple, and you should be able to sail through e-invoicing in the phase 1 as well as the phase 2 and get ready much in advance. So thank you very much once again, and good evening. And I think we'll be in regular touch, and we can have be holding more such sessions for you. Thank you so much. Akash, you want to share something, or we can close?
Yes, sir. We can close the session.